If you were given the option to live forever as a monster or die as nothing, which option would you take? Makoto Okazaki is a teenage boy who, like many, must navigate the complex social mores of high school. As he does his best to fit in, even subjecting himself to the cruel humiliation of some of the more popular students, he accepts his lot in life. After all, he's simply Makoto. One night, after another humiliating day, Makoto leaves the table early to avoid an awkward meal with his expectant parents and his older brother Satoru, the ideal son and a college student with bright prospects. After having some time alone, Makoto decides to return a DVD he's borrowed. His mom protests, of course, but Makoto leaves anyway. Little does he know that a killer is lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. Makoto rides his bike through the cool midnight air, thinking to himself how he wishes they'd just die, when he notices something. Someone preparing to jump from a rooftop. With a confused reaction, he pauses, watching as a figure plummets from the rooftop to a nearby building before launching at him. In one swift movement, Makoto is knocked to the ground. The killer responsible for the recent disappearances sinks her teeth into his throat with a bite that's hard enough to leave him stunned. Yet, as he lies there, bleeding out, dying, the killer asks him a single question. Do you want to die like this, or be like me? A salty mixture of snot and tears run down the dying boy's face, and the killer looks down on him, her piercing eyes beckoning and her blood-covered lips acting as a silent reminder that a choice must be made. Makoto responds, "I don't want to die," and just like that, the killer smiles before standing up, wiping Makoto's blood from her lips and vanishing into the night. The last thing Makoto remembers before the darkness takes him is the unfinished errand that brought him out in the first place, returning the DVD. I've just described the introductory chapters to Happiness, a manga published in Basatsu Shonen magazine and completed in 2019. This story is yet another gem created by Shuzo Oshimi, an author and mangaka notable for his other works, Flowers of Evil and Blood on the Tracks, two stories that play with similar themes to terrifying effect. But when it comes to horror stories, particularly horror manga, this story held my attention from start to finish. While there's no shortage of stories filled with monsters, shadowy figures, and ancient evils, Happiness stands apart, not because of its vampiric premise, but because of how it uses that premise to explore something far more personal. At its core, it's a story about isolation, grief, and a hunger so deep it devours not just flesh, but relationships and identity. In most horror media, the monster is right before you, waiting to be destroyed when the sun rises or the survivors leave the haunted mountain, etc. The horror is inescapable, the monsters can be killed, and the evil can be overcome. Yet in Happiness, there's no running from the monster because the monster is you. Oshimi forces you to watch as his characters confront horror, not just from the outside, but within. Realizing that the transformation is inevitable and that survival might mean losing everything that made you human is where the real fear sets in. That's what makes Shuzo Oshimi's work hit differently. Whether it's Flowers of Evil or Blood on the Tracks, Oshimi excels at portraying the dread of simply being human, the awkwardness, the alienation, and the quiet rage at your own powerlessness. In Happiness, we see this through Makoto's transformation, a teenage boy who must watch everyone he cares about either die, abandon him, or slowly unravel while he's left behind to endure an eternal, transient, and ultimately empty existence. Yet, none of these themes would land half as hard without the art that carries them. From the vibrant cast, Yuki the reformed bully, Gosho the tough but deeply broken girl who clings to Makoto, and now the quiet voice of compassion. All these characters are vivid pieces in the mural that is Happiness, and it's Oshimi's art that paints that mural with a raw, unfiltered brush. When it comes to horrifying art, a subject in which I can't help but immerse myself, I can say with complete confidence, that Oshimi does not simply draw art, he disarms you with it. Because in Happiness, the horror lives not just in what's said, but in what's drawn. The art of Happiness is wrought with such a desperation and franticness that you can't help but feel the fear and loneliness that linger behind the eyes of many of its characters. The backgrounds are often stark, something that many may criticize Oshimi for, but I can't help but feel that there was an intentionality when considering many of the manga's more tragic scenes. Pair that with some of the more violent depictions in the story, and a contrast is created that plays off of that emptiness. The powerful imagery doesn't just end at the backgrounds, however. Some of the most visually impactful panels from Happiness are showcased in the facial close-ups and distorted images that are often preceded by the heightened pain or emotions of certain characters. And in one moment that stuck with me was the stark visual transformation of a character whose mental breakdown is captured entirely through posture, expression, and the eerie silence of a single panel. It is this strong imagery paired with the creeping narrative that separates Happiness from the other stories within the genre that place a heavier emphasis on unrelenting gore and shock. Where someone like Junji Ito might emphasize cosmic dread and grotesque absurdity, Oshimi opts for something quieter and more insidious. His horror lives in the uneasy expressions of broken people, the lingering gaze of something or someone that means to consume you, and in the silence after a scream that never comes. These are all hallmarks of Oshimi's, as many of his works place an emphasis on the psychological aspect of horror. Whether you're reading Blood on the Tracks, where the protagonist, Osabe, is forced to live in fear of his unhinged mother, or it is the much more relatable Flowers of Evil, a story that follows a boy named Kasuga as he struggles to reconcile his desires with the societal expectations that frame the story. To put it plainly, Shuzo Oshimi is a master of using his artistry to convey the sheer terror of the human experience. In Happiness, that terror takes the form of a boy who only wanted to return a DVD, but instead found a hunger that would consume everything he knew. So I guess that leaves us with one question: why should you read Happiness? If you guys know me, and admittedly most of you probably don't, then you know that I am not the guy who's here to read a manga that stretches hundreds of chapters. In the case of Happiness, it is a 10-volume, 50-chapter, introspective, horror-filled banger that doesn't overstay its welcome. No filler arcs, no 1,000-chapter commitment to finding the One Piece, and most importantly, no years of waiting just to get closure. What it lacks in length, Happiness more than makes up for in chapter-to-chapter intensity, as each of the 50 chapters does an excellent job of keeping you sucked in. See what I did there?
That one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
And showing you a harrowing story that you can't help but want to read until the very end. That said, this story isn't for everyone. If you want gore, shock value, Lovecraftian imagery, and the more traditional horror tropes, then maybe give Happiness a try, but if you can't get into it by the end of the first volume, don't be afraid to put it on the shelf for the time being. This story sinks beneath your skin and makes you think about it long after you finish reading it, and it's neatly wrapped up in what can be described as a psychological coming-of-age story. Personally, I was able to finish the story in 2 days, not because I was rushing, but because once the story really ramped up, I just couldn't stop reading. There's this creeping dread that Oshimi weaves into the quieter moments, almost like the horror is waiting behind the next page turn. Not just the horror of monsters, but the horror of growing up, of changing, of not recognizing yourself anymore, and it just made me think, what would I do in Makoto's shoes? And not just the moment he gets turned, but all the moments after when he's forced to live with that decision. So, let me ask you again, if you had the choice to live forever as a monster or die as nothing, what would you choose? That question sits at the heart of Happiness, and it lingers long after the final page. If you've already read it, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments, and if you haven't, give it a shot. Just don't expect to come out the same. In a story that's as cerebral and real as this one, you'll be left wanting to scan every page, and when you can't anymore, I'm sure you'll find yourself eager to check out more of Shuzo Oshimi's phenomenal work. And hey, if you like this video, check out my Double 4 anime vid, and keep an eye out for my next one. Anyway, love you guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.